means that the number one pick in the 2021 NBA draft goes to the Detroit Pistons.
Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft? Who's got the number one pick in this year's draft?
Basketball!
Select Isaiah Stewart.
The Detroit Pistons select Killian Hayes.
Sadiq, that was absolutely sensational.
I don't know what went into that process. I met the criteria to be selected, but I wasn't.
From long range. Oh! Yes!
Detroit Basketball! Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Podcast Network. I'm your host, returned from my short hiatus, Mike Anguilano, and joining me, as always, is Aaron Johnson and Jasper Apollonia. Fellas, I'm really happy to be back. I hope that you were all able to hold down the fort and you weren't too nervous about the ad reads.
The trio is back, and it feels so good. The ad reads, as always, are tough without you, but we are glad to have you back, not just for your ability to talk about our amazing sponsor, but to guide us and give us your Pistons thoughts from an outside point of view as well. So, Mike, good to have you back. Jasper, good to be with you again. Guys, I am pumped to be with both of you, ready to talk about the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah, I feel like I'm talking with a ghost right now. It's been so long, Mike. You were missed, but it's great to have you back. And now Aaron and I no longer have to force our transitions into ad reads. We have the master back. The Caravaggio of the Pistons podcasting community is here, folks. Thank God for that. Yeah, it's been an exciting week and a half now for the Pistons, because they're 5-4 in their last 9 games. So Pistons have actually been winning a little bit. We got Mike back. Everything's coming up Millhouse, guys.
I mean, it doesn't get much better than me coming back, the Pistons winning some games, and everybody gets to blow up about the Bol Bol trade being rescinded, thinking that he was going to turn into the next version of Kevin Durant or whatever people had in mind.
Well, he's taller than Kevin Durant, so actually he'd probably be better than KD. As long as we're speaking realistically.
That's a factual statement.
Right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We don't want to temper expectations at all.
No.
Kevin
We don't
Durant,
do that.
obviously better.
Look, I read the comments.
Kevin Durant.
I read the comments from our listeners. They do not like it when we're negative. So I will keep things positive. Bol Bol is Kevin Durant mixed with Joel Embiid mixed with James Harden. And the Pistons will never be the same, unfortunately, now that that trade was rescinded. But we should talk about that, right? Because the entire title of last week's podcast was the Pistons traded for Bol Bol, and now we have our next podcast, unfortunately, is the exact opposite. That trade was rescinded. What the hell happened here, guys?
I think, firstly, I should probably name this week's podcast the Pistons did not trade for Bol Bol. I mean, we knew like the foot injury was a problem in college, but very weird that trade did not go through, because it didn't sound like that was going to happen in the slightest. We didn't get any sort of information on that. Bol Bol's been relatively healthy. Like, we haven't heard that he's been having any problems. So to see that not go through, very weird. And it's also probably just as weird for Rodney McGruder to be walking back into the locker room after he went through a practice and suited up for a game for Denver.
That's so weird. Hey, at least the Pistons didn't give away his number to somebody else, like the Nuggets did with Bol Bol. They gave his number away to James Ennis, who they signed right after the trade went through. So I don't know how that works for Bol Bol now. Does James Ennis have to give up his? Does he have to give up his number, or does Bol Bol get his back, or does Bol Bol have to pick a new number? How does that even work? I really wonder. It's hard to imagine Bol Bol plays another game for the Nuggets after that. I mean, he seemed really upset. He took his Instagram private. It seemed like he was not.
He's definitely not playing another game with Denver.
Right.
I think that probably pretty much just ended that partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, guys, that's a great little segue here into the Bol Bol trade being rescinded. Rodney Magruder comes back. The Brooklyn Nets 2022 second-round pick is returned to the treasure chest that Troy Weaver has. You did talk a lot last week about low risk, high reward type of deal, getting Bol Bol. Obviously, everybody had their expectations wildly higher than they needed to be. If he was a good player, the Nuggets would not be sending him away for freaking Rodney Magruder and a second round pick from Brooklyn. But that's neither here nor there. I vote that we start to do like It's Always Sunny title and just say the gang walks back the Bol Bol trade or, something like that.
We'll make sure the editor puts in some of the It's Always Sunny music. It's royalty free, Aaron. So we could get away with it too. Much like the
Enthusiasm theme probably also works.
I was going to say exactly. Good thinking. But yeah, no, it was definitely, I will say though, like we can joke about it. And the fact of the matter is it probably wasn't going to be a super impactful trade. However, it is a disappointment that this trade didn't go through because the Pistons absolutely could have used somebody like Bol Bol in their rotation, somebody who can jump, somebody who has length, somebody who has athleticism, somebody who can pick and pop. It's a shame that they didn't get him. And like we were saying last week, those low risk, high reward kind of guys. Another guy, I know, Aaron, you wrote this as kind of our third topic, but he is, I think, relevant to this conversation. Cam Reddish for the Hawks, who we've been talking about as a potential target for the Pistons, especially in Jeremy Grant trades. He was moved to the Knicks for what will essentially just be a mid-late first round pick, something probably in the early 20s. So it is hard for me, even with the Pistons going on a little bit of a run, even with them getting a couple guys back, it's hard for me not to feel disappointed with how things have gone so far, because as of right now, Jeremy Grant's still here. And there's two guys that you were interested in as trade targets who now no longer are available to you. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the Bol Bol trade, and I think I'm not going to really change my stance on it from last week. Like, it was a fine trade. The Pistons didn't really give up anything, to get Bol Bol. Obviously, he has some potential. The size is intriguing. The ability to shoot the ball is intriguing at his size. But there's always been a reason why he hasn't been able to kind of carve out his role in the NBA yet. And it's not really the end of the world that the trade got rescinded. Not that getting, Rodney Magruder in the second round pick back is a good thing, but I just I don't think people should be reacting as if Detroit just lost out on, a future all-star or anything. Like, Bol Bol very much could have been a productive NBA player. He might still end up being a productive NBA player, but there were reasons in Denver that he never really was able to find it and never really able to put together in 2.5 seasons. I mean, he had 2.5 years to prove, to acclimate, to adjust, and he really didn't. I mean, there were talks within the locker room that he wasn't, fitting in with the guys. He was demanding a bigger role, but then he wasn't putting in the work to really live up to that type of opportunity. And, his numbers are fine. And if you look at him at a per 36 value, but those numbers, inflating those numbers, it doesn't matter. Like, I've had multiple people reach out to me, look at his per 36, look at his per 36, look at how great those numbers are. And it's like, yeah, those numbers look good, but that does, just because they're per 36 doesn't mean he's going to go do that for 36 minutes a game. Like, that's just not how it works. And I mean, he would have been a fine prospect to bring to the Pistons, a team that obviously is at the bottom tier of the NBA right now. Definitely should be taking swings on guys. The trade was good. The trade was fine, but I think people are reacting to it as if Detroit was getting and now ended up didn't getting a guy that was going to be this really, really good player. And I just think that wasn't going to be the case, and it won't be the case. Bol Bol, again, may end up being a productive NBA player, but he's got a long way to go before I'm comfortable saying that.
Yeah, and you know what? If we're talking about overreactions, how about Domantas Montezuma on Twitter going in and calling out. I mean, for people who don't remember, he was part of that 2016 trade that got rescinded because he failed his physical too, just like Bol Bol did with the Pistons. Like him going on and calling out the Pistons and saying, "Oh, they're ruining players' careers," blah blah blah. Like, what a load of crap that was. I just have to say that real quick because it got reported on a little bit, and it's completely ridiculous. It's a completely different coaching staff, completely different training staff, like totally different front office. The only thing that is the same is the organization name and Tom Gores. And I don't think Tom Gores is going out there and telling team physicians to fail guys' physicals. I don't think that's what's happening here. So that to me, I just had to quickly mention it. It got a little bit of traction on Twitter, and I just thought that was a total overreaction by Montehunis, and I just thought it was kind of a load of crap. So I had to say that.
He went on to have an injury plague like last 2 years of his NBA career before having to, moving overseas to play basketball too. So obviously it wasn't just the Pistons that found something wrong with his medicals. His back was a problem, before and after the Pistons. So I don't think it was anything specifically related to them. And as you mentioned, different front office, different medical people, not the same. Just, yeah, it's a coincidence, really, I guess, that the two, it's the same franchise and the two rescinded trades. But yeah, I wasn't expecting him to pop back up like that, but he did. And it's just kind of funny how that worked out. But yeah, there's really no merit to what he said either. I thought that was a little bit out of left field.
Talk about a throwback to a player. There's like some athletes that you forget existed, and then you hear their name and you're like, oh yeah, that is a player that I used to sort of know about. The whole Twitter thing did gain traction, and Bol Bol had, is a little bit more popular than I guess the average second round pick, just because of how massive he is and his name. But all got blown out of proportion, of course, with Montehunis. So I don't really think that the Pistons are missing out on even a good player. I mean, he is just a big body that would be nice to have, but at the end of the day, you can go ahead and use Magruder and a second round pick and get, another player, reevaluate things or package it with someone else, or include it in what we thought was inevitable Marvin Bagley the third trade and see what happens. Speaking of bigs, one of the Pistons bigs just came back, and that's Kelly Olynyk. He was active against Phoenix Suns on Sunday. He didn't play. Dwayne Casey said that probably play sometime this week, and Detroit has games this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So with Kelly Olynyk back, and with Trey Lyles playing, really making us eat crow. I mean, he's really ruining the credibility of this podcast of how much we trashed him.
Mike,
how Aaron and I.
Mike, I was going to say we do a good enough job of trashing our own reputations. We don't need Trey Lyles' help on this one. All right.
Yeah, but the fact that he's doing it so well makes us look somehow worse. And Mason Plumlee and Jeremy Grant made Aaron and I eat crow last year too. So we're off to a really bad start in evaluating free agent picks from Troy Weaver. Really bad. So guys, with Kelly Olynyk coming back, this helps the Pistons a lot, maybe more than we'd like Kelly Olynyk to shore up the rotation. So there are some options. Sadiq Bey and Hamidou Diallo have both been playing super well in playing the forward. Hammy at the 4 has been pretty nice. Isaiah Stewart still playing, still starting at center, that is. But with Trey Lyles playing so well and with Diallo playing pretty well at the 4, there's a little bit more of a glut in terms of how the rotation is going to shake out. So, Aaron, how would you adjust the rotation to bring back Kelly Olynyk and not disrupt the good flow that Hammy and Trey Lyles have been showing?
Well, first off, I want to say, look, last year you and I definitely got it taken to us. Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee both were obviously really good signings by the Pistons. Trey Lyles has been playing better as of late, but don't get it twisted. He is still an absolute turnstile on defense. I mean, he definitely has been playing well offensively. Moving to the 5 like full time has really seemed to open things up for him. I don't know if it's just like the matchups, he's getting a little bit of slower footed guys on him because Lyles isn't the quickest, but if he gets a slower guy on him, that's probably why he's, getting to the rim a little bit more. He is using all of the pump fakes in the world to get to the rim. And he's manufacturing points on the offensive end, but he's also still not living up to, I'm not saying expectations, because I don't think there ever were expectations for him to really be an impact defensively, but living up to a standard of defending. I won't say he's on the same level as Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee in terms of our thoughts on those signings before they played with Detroit and now after. But Lyles has been better now that he's been playing the backup 5, but that probably has to change, honestly, with Olynyk coming back. Whether Olynyk starts or comes off the bench, I think it's likely that he comes off the bench. I do think there's a case to be made that he should be in the starting lineup instead of Stewart to really get some more shooting around Cade, especially with Diallo being the guy around the rim that's cutting and elevating. It's a little bit too bunched with trying to get Killian and Cade both going at the rim and then having Diallo and Stewart both on the court, 2 guys that really aren't threats from the outside. So it probably does make sense for Olynyk to eventually start. I don't think that'll be the case, especially right off the bat. So yeah, Detroit does have a little bit of an interesting situation to handle. Like, I guess it probably just ends up being that Olynyk and Lyles are on the court together with the backup unit. I don't know what that will do to Lyles' production. I think I talked about, he did better against slower footed 5s. But Olynyk being back is going to be a good thing. I really think it's going to open up some offensive options for Detroit. And Frank Jackson's coming back too. And I think getting both those guys back, 2 of the team's best shooters, 2 of the team's best offensive options, which is really kind of an unfortunate thing that you have to admit. But they will both really help. And I think both of them need to be on the floor with Cade because they both can shoot, stretch the floor. Olynyk, he didn't have great shooting numbers to start off the season. He was actually getting a lot of his stuff down low, putting the ball on the floor. Like, his offense was really not normal for a guy his size. But just having his presence back along with Frank Jackson, I want to see both those guys on the floor with Cade Cunningham, maximize shooting, maximize opening up space for Cade to get to the rim, which is what he does very well. So that's what I'm looking for with Kelly Olynyk due back soon and Frank Jackson not far behind him.
Yeah, Aaron, I agree. I thought the Toronto game was a great example of what the Pistons offense should look like with Kelly Olynyk back, where, you had the 4 starters plus Trey Lyles because Isaiah Stewart had all that foul trouble kind of really early. And Lyles, I thought, played really well offensively. And if you're looking for what the Pistons rotations should be looking like, I think that if you replace Lyles with Kelly Olynyk, I think that can only help you. And I think that that's actually a very dangerous lineup. A lineup of Killian Hayes, Cade Cunningham, Saddiq Bey, and Hamidou Diallo, along with Kelly Olynyk. I think that is a starting 5 that can really deal some damage. I think you're right. Olynyk will start off back on the bench, but there is a real argument to be made for him starting over Isaiah Stewart at this moment because, frankly, Stewart has been a pretty big disappointment. Offensively, I know we were expecting some improvement. I don't know if we were expecting a massive improvement, but the fact of the matter is, not only has there not been improvement with Isaiah Stewart, there's been a regression on that end of this year. He's not scoring near the basket. He's certainly not shooting from outside. And he doesn't provide you with enough gravity on that end of the floor. He doesn't provide you with the screens that you need for your guards to get downhill. It's just not working right now with him in the starting lineup. And we've always said this. I think the kind of the consensus on this podcast has been, even since last year, that he's a high-level backup more likely than an actual starter. But I think it's really, really clear right now, when Kelly Olynyk gets back, he's got to be getting a lot of run with Cade Cunningham, getting a lot of run with Killian Hayes. That's just got to be what it is because he's too good of a passer not to, and his gravity opens up looks for other players. I think Hamidou Diallo is a guy that if he's playing alongside Olynyk in that starting lineup, that is just going to send his efficiency through the roof because he doesn't have to hang out on the 3-point line. He can get down and he can get into the paint, which is what he really wants to do. Same goes for Cade Cunningham. Same goes for Killian Hayes. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm kind of excited for Kelly Olynyk to be back. I'm interested to see how this offense looks with him on the floor.
I really do think that the Pistons will look best when they commit to playing him as the starting center. I don't know if they will, but you mentioned that Isaiah Stewart has not lived up to expectations, and he really hasn't. I mean, he does some great stuff protecting the rim defensively, but most of the time he's in foul trouble. And on offense, he's not a threat to score the basketball down low or outside. He's not a rim runner. He's not efficient posting up. He's not efficient on dump offs. He's just not a threat on that end of the court. And the Pistons need more of a scoring punch outside of Cade Cunningham and Sadiq Bey. You never know what you're going to get from Killian Hayes on a nightly basis. Most of the time it's around 5-6 points a game. And Diallo is kind of a wild card in that same sense where if the team sags on him, he's really not a huge threat because he can't shoot from the outside. So you've got to find a way to open up the defense, create spacing for Diallo to be, down low more and open up space for your floor generals to get to the cup. And having a shooter like Olynyk, a passer like Olynyk, just more of an offensively capable player like Olynyk will really open things up for them. Defensively, I think there's going to be some adjustments with that, but I think it's worth it to try to figure some stuff out offensively.
But I like his defense better than Lyles anyway.
For sure.
Olynyk's a better post defender than Trey Lyles is. So for me, I don't think you're going to really experience any sort of a serious drop off at that end. And we're already seeing it with Stewart. Like he's the best post defender on this team. Isaiah Stewart is. But guess what? He's such a zero offensively that it doesn't even really matter. I'd rather give up 6 extra points per game on the defensive end and have a watchable offense than roll with Stewart if he's going to give you absolutely nothing, especially if you have Killian Hayes in the lineup too. You can't have two guys that can't score in your starting five. That just doesn't work, period.
Yeah, that's the issue too is when we saw Isaiah Stewart play last year, we thought, oh, that's a young athletic center who might be able to do some fun stuff, as a role man, or kind of like a Tristan Thompson-y role of box people out and get boards. And he is averaging about a rebound and a half more per, this year, but he hasn't translated any of those things. So now you have 2 net zeros on offense. And at least with Kelly Olynyk, you can space the floor and make defenses care a little bit more about where the opposing players are at. But right now, you're just not getting that with Isaiah Stewart. And it's just clogging up the offense, having both him and Hayes.
Without a doubt. And look, if I had to put money on it, I would say Kelly Olynyk is the starter in 2 weeks. I just don't see how you can continue on. Or if it's not him, maybe Trey Lyles becomes the starter, but I have a hard time seeing Dwayne Casey making that kind of switch. I think he likes having, somebody like Stewart, a little bit better of a defender out there with his starters, because Lyles, while he has been really good as of late, is still, like you said, Aaron, a turnstile defensively. He is still super inconsistent on the offensive end as well. I know he's hot right now, but give it a little bit of time. He'll do something else that'll drive us nuts. So
yeah, he will eventually come back down. I would not be betting on Trey Lyles sticking around in this offensive capacity for long, but you got to ride it while you have it. And speaking of bets, BetOnline is our sponsor. BetOnline is our sponsor for this week's episode. BetOnline is back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of the NFL playoffs, basketball season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is the number one spot for all basketball and football action this season. We're now on day 3 of NFL playoffs, which is still a little bit strange how they decided to spread everything out again. Head on over to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit using the promo code BLEAV50. That's BLEAV 50. Get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Well, Mike,
yes,
you know who's been
my segue-ness.
Is beautiful. You know who's actually been a really nice, profitable betting team for me as of late is those Detroit Pistons. I bet on them against the Jazz. I won that, and I also bet them to cover against the Raptors, which they more than did. They beat the crap out of Toronto.
Yeah.
So, by the way, if folks out there, if you're looking for an easy win, just bet on Dwayne Casey against the old Toronto Raptors. He owns them. You have to love it.
Yeah, you have to know to put money on the Pistons when they're playing the Raptors. I mean, you just have to know that by this point.
I mean, that one was easy money. It was easy money. I felt like I was cheating almost. I even tweeted about it before the game. That's how confident I was. Dwayne Casey, I don't know what it is. I really don't. Is it his old players don't want to beat him because they love him so much? Is it he just knows the right buttons to push? Is it the narrative is more powerful than anything else? I have no clue, but at this point, I am a full-on believer. Dwayne Casey he owns that franchise. That's his franchise to beat. Him and LeBron James, they just can't lose to the Raptors.
Boy,
you're talking on Mike's heartstrings right there.
I know. The good old LeBronto era.
That's right.
Well, anyway, I mean, the Cavs are better now. And this team is so infinitely more fun to watch than that 2017-18 Cavs team. It's not even remotely funny.
Since we're talking about betting, I did put some more money. I already had some on him. But Darius Garland for Most Improved Player of the Year. I mean, he's plus 1,900 right now. That's really awesome. Intriguing. Just sprinkle something on there. I know Ja Morant is the favorite right now, but I don't know. It kind of seems weird that he's the front run. I feel like he's too good to be involved in the discussion. I don't know. Maybe I'm just over exaggerating how good he was last year. Maybe the jump really is that significant, but wasn't he phenomenal last year too? Not to take away anything that he's doing this year. Obviously, Memphis, a top team in the West. He's playing great. Desmond Bane is playing great. A lot of the guys are clicking there. But Darius Garland for Most Improved Player of the Year, I think is something that I'm going to continue to ride. They are a fun team, and he is a phenomenal basketball player. And he's an example of not giving up on a point guard after 80 games. This guy had a bad rookie year. A lot of people were already saying, oh, this guy's a bust of a pick. Why did the Cavs take him? And look at him now. He's a guy that I believe deserves to be on the All-Star team. He had 27 and 18 the other night. Phenomenal basketball player. So fun to watch. Glad he's playing well. And honestly, I really enjoy the Cavs. I've watched them a handful of times this year. Him and Jared Allen, always been a Jared Allen guy. That's a fun team, man. I'm happy for Mike, even though they really don't deserve it since they just got LeBron, but it is what it is at this point.
They're a tremendously fun team.
I'm not happy for Mike. I want to make that clear. The Cavaliers are an in-division rival. No way. Screw them. I hate seeing them win. I don't like it. I also hate that Evan Mobley is right now still probably beating out Cade Cunningham for the Rookie of the Year, although I could definitely see that changing in upcoming months as well, because, man, Cade has been so good. We haven't even really talked about the Suns game yesterday, in where Cade was, awesome. So good. And they threw him out of the game on a BS double technical. I have to hear both of your guys' thoughts on that, because that was, I mean, he was going for 30. He's gotten close a couple times this year, but he was going to score 30 points. He was just lighting up the Suns. I know that the Pistons ended up getting killed, but he was phenomenal. He's been phenomenal for a while now.
It's really disappointing that he was playing that well and he got tossed for just a nonsense technical. I mean, even the multiple people that I follow on Suns Twitter were talking about how wild it was that he got ejected. And Kevin Cutler was the ref that threw him out, I believe. And he was the one that was talking to Cade at halftime. Like, Cade went up to him at the end of the first half and was, talking to him, explaining something, asking for something. And like, they even dapped up at the end of it. Like, it looked like it was, everyone was cool. Everyone was fine. But then he comes out in the third and gets a tech for pointing, which is just like, when did the NBA become the no fun league? Like, that's the NFL's thing. Why is the NBA trying to mimic that? I mean, guys should be able to celebrate. I mean, Russ rocks the baby. Like, everyone has their celebrations. And because Cade Cunningham pointed towards the bench, he got a technical foul. It was nonsense. It's unfortunate. It is what it is. I mean, it's just really not a good look for the NBA as refs continue to dominate discussion throughout the year and dominate big moments and games that they shouldn't be, because that's not their job. And it just continues to be an issue. I don't know if they got a lot of G League guys up right now because there's, different health and safety protocols and whatnot. I don't know what it is, but NBA refs have not had a good year. Officials in general. I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever going to say that they're having a good year, but man, it has been very, very obvious, especially in the NBA, that the refs are not doing the best job.
I mean, I tweeted it out yesterday. I think that that COVID has made it very clear that the line between NBA ref and guy who has absolutely zero business being an NBA ref is very, very thin. And we're seeing that line right now because, look, I think a lot of these crews have not had an opportunity to ref together, which makes it harder. A lot of them are replacement. It's just ugly right now. It's really bad. And for Cade Cunningham especially, it does seem like the refs have it out for him. How many times per game do you guys think Cade gets to the line? How many free throw attempts do you think he shoots per game?
Doesn't he only shoot like 1.5, 2?
It's 2.1. 2.1 free throws per game. And that for me is, I mean, that's just crazy. There's just no, that is refs making sure to not call fouls for this guy. I mean, look, something like what? I think like 40% of his shots come within 10 feet of the basket. So it's not like he's a player who's primarily just shooting from outside, although he does shoot a lot of threes. He's a physical player. We saw it against the Raptors. We saw it yesterday against the Suns on that dunk, the very dunk where he got thrown out of the game. He got hit by Jalen Smith, and they didn't call a foul for him. It's really getting really bad. And yeah, I mean, look, when you see him go over to the refs before halftime and talk to them and try and explain where he's coming from and do it very calmly and then get thrown out of the game anyway, it's hard not to think that there is some sort of agenda against him right now for whatever reason there may be, because I'm sorry, there's just zero reason Cade Cunningham should only be shooting 2 free throws a game.
That's just taking your rookie lumps. I mean, eventually that will change. Yeah, I went and looked back at the play where he got tossed against the Suns, and on both instances, I thought they were pretty weak calls, for sure. And he was playing awesome. The Pistons were getting, smoked, but Cade was playing very well, and it'll be a 2-man race between him and Evan Mobley for Rookie of the Year. But if the Cavs sneak into the playoffs, or I mean, at this point, host a first-round series, I don't really know. I feel like they're like delirious right now with how well they're playing. I mean, they should have lost to Oklahoma City. That was like a scheduled loss, but Darius Garland said no and willed them to a win. If the Cavs make the playoffs and Evan Mobley continues to play the way he's playing, he'll probably win it. But Cade Cunningham is so good. It'll be a two-man race, I feel. But let's get into our third and final topic. This required me to redo part of my article, which will hopefully be coming out about some Jeremy Grant trade packages. And that is that the Pistons were one of the suitors for Cam Reddish. Cam Reddish, of course, was traded to the Knicks for a protected first-round draft pick in Kevin Knox. There's obviously some disappointment from Pistons Twitter in not getting Cam Reddish. I don't necessarily know why he was not very good. Maybe it's just the potential, and the Pistons should be taking chances on potential as opposed to waiting, especially if the asking price was a protected first rounder and a really horrible small forward in Kevin Knox. But guys, any disappointment in not getting in on Cam Reddish? The Athletic reported that the Pistons were one of the teams interested in acquiring the former Duke wing. Any disappointment in not going a little bit harder after Cam Reddish?
It really depends. And this is why, because I do think Jeremy Grant is going to be moved before the deadline this year. And while I am still interested in Cam Reddish as a prospect, there are other guys out there that I'm simply more interested in. If they can somehow get DeAndre Hunter and Okongwu from Atlanta, please, by all means, go for it. If they can still somehow get Patrick Williams from the Bulls, please, by all means, go for it. For me, I'm only going to be disappointed if the trade deadline comes and goes and the Pistons have not bolstered their rotation at all in terms of picking up another talented guy via trade. Yeah, I mean, Cam's an interesting prospect still. He's, just 22, but you're right. He has not been a very impactful NBA player in his 3 years in the league so far, Mike. And obviously it didn't cost very much for the Knicks to pick him up. I have to wonder if for the Pistons, the reason they didn't go for it was because, Atlanta's going to ask for a first rounder in any trade for him. And the Pistons are certainly not going to be giving up their first round pick this year. So I wonder if that's maybe has something to do with it. I also wonder if the Pistons are interested in potentially acquiring that first round pick from the Knicks via another trade with Atlanta. So no, I'm not disappointed yet. I really need to see exactly how this trade deadline shakes out before I'm going to say, oh, this was a loss for Troy Weaver. This was a win for Troy Weaver, because although it was a relatively low cost acquisition for New York, I think that there are better trades to be had for a player of Jeremy Grant's caliber.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, look, Cam Reddish would have definitely been interesting for Detroit. I feel like the asking price, like Detroit probably shouldn't be trading a first round pick. And on the roster outside of Jeremy Grant, what else were they going to give up? Like, if the value was less than Jeremy Grant, right? But it was also a first round pick. You're a rebuilding team. You probably don't want to give up draft capital for that. So I was in on the idea of trading for Cam Reddish. If you could have gotten Reddish and Okongwu for Grant, as much as I am not as excited about the idea of trading Grant as others are, which is, again, what I wrote about last week on palaceofpistons.com, I could at least accept that Detroit was getting two young prospects that both could fill a legitimate need on the Pistons roster moving forward, and Reddish being a scoring-minded wing with defensive abilities if he ever fully committed to that side of the ball, and then Okongwu obviously being a jumpy, rim-running, defensive-minded big that would fill the role in the pick and roll for the Pistons offense. So it's not the end of the world. I'm wondering what the Hawks wanted back, if there was talks outside of Jeremy Grant that were discussed. And I mean, at the end of the day, you would have liked to have Cam Reddish, but I'm fine with Detroit not giving up a first round pick, because we don't know what their future looks like. This is going to be a lottery team this year, and it could be next year and the year after that, for all we know.
I always think it's really funny when trade talk comes around, and like, I'll be the first to admit, I can guess but I really don't know what the hell I'm talking about when it comes to reputation and expectations among, people in the league when it comes to trade value. Because I think there was a lot of people on Pistons Twitter saying, oh, you can't trade Jeremy Grant for Cam Reddish and Okongwu. The Hawks will never do that. Cam Reddish is worth way more. And then it turns out the asking price is like a late first rounder in Kevin Knox's contract, basically. So it's always funny to kind of see what guys go for, because it feels like among Twitter people, even among a lot of like media people, perceived trade value is not necessarily what somebody's trade value is, right? I think we all saw Cam Reddish and went, oh, okay, he'll be part of a package, but like it might be tough for the Pistons to pull that off. Now you look at it and you go, oh, well, just getting Cam Reddish and Okongwu from the Hawks for Jeremy Grant would actually be a horrible misuse of Jeremy Grant and his trade value. He's obviously going to get you more than that. So I don't know. It's kind of an aside. I just always find that kind of funny to see what we think guys' trade values are and what they really are when it comes down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah. And teams always overvalue, fans will always overvalue players that play for their favorite team. I mean, I remember posting something about Andre Drummond being traded, and somebody in the Palace of Pistons group chat thought, oh, it's got to be Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton and who is, on their way to Detroit for Andre Drummond. And it was John Henson and Brandon Knight and a garbage second rounder. And everyone thought, what? That is impossibly bad value. It's like, well, as it turns out, that there was more value in not having Andre Drummond on the team than getting back a meaningful asset.
Well,
we always overvalue our favorite players.
Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. You look at like the Andre Drummond trade, but you could also look on the other hand. You could look at the Svi Mikhailuk and a second rounder for Hamidou Diallo deal. Like Diallo's obviously his value was not very high, but that was a steal of a deal. So we could be looking back at this in, a couple of years, looking back at that deal as being like, oh man, the Pistons really should have got in on that. They really should have gotten Cam Reddish. But the fact of the matter is he has not proven himself as an NBA contributor yet. He has the defensive potential, but he's not a lockdown defender. He doesn't pass. The guy averages an assist per game. Like, he does not pass. And he's still highly inefficient from the floor. Yes, his 3-point percentage is up. He's shooting like 38%, but the guy only shoots 42% from 2-point range. That's really bad. Like, that is not a good sign. So I think for me, I need to see what Troy Weaver is going to do with the rest of, the time left before the trade deadline. I do still think there is at least one or two trades. I mean, it's clear they're trying to acquire young assets. Obviously, the Bol Bol thing didn't go through, but if that's not a sign that the Pistons are looking to get involved, I don't know what is.
Yeah, they're definitely trying to make moves. Even Dwayne Casey said that after the Bol Bol trade. Is like, yeah, we are out there trying to acquire some different young guys and different guys to take chances on. Like, they're just coming out and saying it. So I'm fully expecting, whether it's a big trade that involves Jeremy Grant or it's a smaller deal that involves someone like Corey Joseph or Trey Lyles, like, I am very much anticipating that there is at least one trade that's going to go down for the Pistons. Troy Weaver does not sit around, idle. He is always looking to adjust the roster, tinker with it, and take chances on guys, which is something that he absolutely should be doing as he's retooling a team. So yeah, I definitely expect Detroit to continue to be active with a little less than a month left until the trade deadline.
I want to throw out, I know we have to wrap things up. One guy we have not talked about, but it does seem like there's a high likelihood he could be on the move. Mo Bamba from the Orlando Magic. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know if anything will come of that, but it does seem like the Magic are willing to deal him. He is the type of guy that I think would absolutely be worth taking a shot on here in Detroit. He's proven this year that he is definitely capable of being an NBA defender. He's averaging over 2 blocks a game. So just throwing that out there. If there is a chance that they could get Mo Bamba, maybe not for Jeremy Grant, but for something else, I would absolutely be open to it, and I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. So just throwing that one out there. We've thrown a lot of them, but I think still number one for me is going to be that Patrick Williams potential trade. And that for me is the one that I'm really looking at as the one I think has a really high likelihood of happening.
Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. I thought I read something that said the Magic wanted a first rounder for Mo Bamba. Is that correct?
You're gonna put me on the spot like that, and
well, I mean, I was just wondering. I thought I saw somebody, maybe it was Hoops Hype, aggregate that the Magic were looking for a first rounder for Mo Bamba.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they're horrible, and just need more players at this point. So yeah, maybe not, but I don't know. I mean, again, if there is a trade to be made where, you still make a trade with the Atlanta Hawks and you acquire their late first rounder, maybe you turn around and you flip that into Mo Bamba. I don't know.
Jasper, you're in my brain because that's sort of what I was thinking. It seems like the Hawks getting that protected first rounder would combine it with another big move, like say that first rounder and Okongwu and Danilo Gallinari for Jeremy Grant, and maybe there's another pick in there, and then the Pistons can flip that first rounder and another player, just to fill roster and salary space for Mo Bamba, or I guess rather DeAndre Hunter and the first rounder and Gallinari or Bogdanovich to match salary to get Bamba. So the Pistons end up with Hunter and Mo Bamba, which is not bad at all. That would be at least interesting. No,
I like DeAndre Hunter a lot. The biggest concern with him is if he can stay healthy, because when he's healthy, he is a very valuable player. I mean,
oh well, that's why you trade for Mo Bamba, another guy with no injury history whatsoever. So.
That's the problem. Not only does the prospect have to be good, he's got to be able to stay healthy, and that's why I'm just kind of in favor of saying, hey, maybe the Pistons should keep Jeremy Grant. He's actually a pretty useful player, and the guy is only 28. Like, I just don't understand why people are acting like he's going to be 35, making $35 million a year. Like, that's just not going to be the case. The Pistons can sign him to an extension this year, and he'll be coming off of a contract at 32, 33. He'll still have been able to play good basketball. He's the type of guy that can play different roles. Like, if the Pistons just were able to commit to using him a different way as Cade Cunningham continues to rise up the charts of being the guy offensively, getting Jeremy Grant in a little bit of a different role with less isolations, post-ups, things of that nature, like letting him cut, letting him spot up, he can be a very valuable player on both ends of the floor. So it's fun to talk about all these different trades, but I still do truly think in the end the Pistons would just be best off keeping the guy that we know is a productive and good and healthy NBA player, rather than some of these other prospects that we spent time talking about that are more than likely not going to be Pistons.
You mean you don't want Talen Horton-Tucker and Kendrick Nunn for Jeremy Grant?
Oh my gosh. Lakers fans are absolutely delusional.
Talk about overvaluing your favorite team's players. Talen Horton-Tucker has being vamped up all the way into a, could have gone in the lottery but didn't kind of player.
Screw it. We're trading for Russell Westbrook.
Oh, man.
I'm just kidding, man.
How many shots would clang off the iron between him and Killian Hayes on the floor? We'll just have Russ as a super small ball 5.
I was going to say they'd combine for 20 a night. 19 of them coming from Russ. It is what it is.
Turnovers or
whatever, man. Missed shots, turnovers, plays where you go, no, do that. No. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Fellas, good podcast. We'll have a lot more trade talk coming in the next couple of weeks as things start to ramp up. The Cam Reddish trade's really just the appetizer for NBA trade deadline talk. And there's a lot of players, including Grant, and we didn't even talk about John Collins, or obviously Tim Forkin's favorite, Ben Simmons. Discussions, certainly have to look at that, but it'll be a very active deadline, and it certainly looks like the Pistons will be very active as well. So, fellas, any thoughts before we close out the podcast here? The Pistons are 5-4 in 2022. That's
they are
a positive. We didn't talk about that enough, but they are starting to play some better basketball.
Well, I just have one last thought. I think that we should name this podcast "The Pistons Do Not Trade for Patrick Williams," just because everything that we name our podcast, the opposite of it happens. So I think we should name it that.
That's a great idea.
Right? Just the old
reverse
reverse
George Costanza methodology of
that's right.
Do the opposite of whatever I think is the right thing.
Exactly. And I think that would work out great. Let's also name the next one after that: Pistons lose the 2023 NBA championship. I'm just spitballing here. No, that's all I got for today, guys.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm glad we were all able to get back together and talk Pistons. Let's do this more often with all three of us. I like it this way.
Yes. I will do my best to make sure that I am available for more than one or two podcasts a month. But BetOnline is available always. I'd like to have a nice shout out to our sponsor once again. BetOnline, you can use the promo code BLEAV50, that's BLEAV50, get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. For Aaron Johnson, Jasper Apollonia, my name is Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast. We will see you all next time, Pistons fans.